What's up, Star Wars Unlimited fans? It's Loopee here at Late Night Gaming, and I'm really happy to be joined for this Learn by Commentary PQ coverage with the eventual champion of Chicago, Grumpy Elephant. How you doing, man?
Hey, Loopy, good to be here. What a fun chance to relive Chicago right before we switch to set 4.
Right, and we got kind of some technical issues and some delays, and then just broadcasting 3 other PQs. Got it. But we have some excellent coverage. We have perfect video quality of all of this. That is not possible when you're doing remote coverage. And we also have kind of the belle of the ball. This is the first PQ you won with Quinlan ECL, but
This was Quinlan ECL's debut into the public sphere. A little rough around the edges still, refined over the course of the next month. But it's fun to look back and see really where it all began for me in this deck.
So first off, for people watching, this is not the list you would have recommended at the end of set 3.
No, we brought in resupplies. We took out some of the cards that were trying to be a little too clever. I think Frontline Channel was one of them. I think R2D2 was another. The list that I ended set 3 with was really a more sort of compact, focused, streamlined list. I was really happy with where it ended. Now, of course, comes the fun project of seeing if it still has legs in set 4.
Yep. And that said, you did the achievement of Locked of coming up with a homebrew deck, testing the heck out of it on digital platforms.
Yep.
Before the matches. So tell us about kind of the concept behind Quinlan ECL. And this is the list you ran there.
Yeah. I have always been drawn towards cards with a very low resource cost that can have a very large game impact. And so Bounty Hunter's Quarry is a card that has immediately jumped out to me. That going from a 1-cost card to a 3-cost unit is essentially tripling your investment with the price of, can you kill the unit you play it on? And so thinking of pairing that card then with other newer resource advantage cards that came out in set 3, Hu Yang, right, 4/6 of stats for 3, General's Blade giving you potentially discounts on units turn after turn. The idea was, can we combine enough of these sort of resource advantage effects to create a deck that can go really fast to keep up with the aggro decks and be grindy enough to keep up with some of the more controlling decks? So that's why you see the Cobb Vanth creating this little engine of Bounty Hunter's Quarry into Cobb Vanth into Battlefield Marine. It can just feel like sort of a nesting doll of endless units where you see the tech come in. And so what it's really doing is it's trying to tie these 2 different deck approaches together, go fast, go big, and go long, into one kind of swarmy hybrid off-meta choice that I was hoping folks wouldn't expect.
Yep, and I played as this deck just a couple of times before Chicago. I played as this deck all kinds of times after, to where I was playing it actually about the same rate as Quinlan Tarkentown. I think both are excellent decks. I think that Quinlan is just a very good leader and can be approached in different ways. So people are surprised to hear me say that sometimes, that I think that ECL is just as good as Tarkentown. Well, that's something I said multiple times. But all right, let's look at your opponent in this round. It was James. And this was round 4. You're both 3-0. And James was on Ahsoka Yellow.
Yeah. And needless to say, James took my strategy of bring a deck people aren't going to be prepared for to the next level with a leader that I had very few games against. I obviously didn't see his deck list, but with a curve that ends at 3, you will see I did not know what to expect in our first game, and really had to adapt on the fly to what I thought he was trying to do.
And this is spicy. I mean, it's got all kinds of 1-drops. I can tell you already, this is not at all what Quinlan Tarkentown would want to see with that much under curve.
Yeah.
The Bamboozles would be relevant to this matchup for sure in the main deck if he can find them exactly when he needs them. And I mean, it's just go fast, turn on coordinate.
Yeah.
Much more space than ground.
My swarm build, I would call both of us swarm decks. I am trying to swarm and preserve some amount of hand size and or ability to play cards through smuggle. It looks like this deck is trying to swarm and says either I kill you before I run out of cards, or I have nothing left to do.
Yep, and this was the distribution at Chicago. Sabine was the most represented deck, followed by Cad Bane, followed by Quinlan, in which this was after I had won the Madison thing. Quinlan and Django were both tied. And then we did have, though, 2 Quinlans on ECL and 2 Ahsokas. 1 yellow, 1 red. So this is the only Ahsoka yellow. And there must have been a double red Ahsoka, as well.
I remember we were chatting before that we knew we were on stream and just pleased that there was going to be like a very off meta matchup on the stream for folks to enjoy.
All right. And here is the match. So it looks like you're seated on the lower half with Quinlan ECL. Ahsoka leads with an R2, which I think is a very smart thing to do into Quinlan.
Yep. And I play certainly probably the best 2-drop that I have, but am trying to figure out in my head what this deck that I'm playing against is going to try and do.
Right. And the answer is go wide with 1-drops, which is actually a very much of a challenge, at least when I'm playing Quinlan Tarkentown.
And so that's probably where I arrive in my head with this next play, which is, okay, let me get a Sentinel on the ground that can stop this assault, immediately blown out by a Sanctioner Shuttle, which is, having never played this deck, if you'd given me, 15 minutes to think through what a list might look like, I should have realized Sanctioner Shuttle's a good fit. They're always going to have coordinate. Not part of my thought process game 1, and so I just get blown out, and I'm on the back foot from here on out.
Right, and whenever you have, and this is all sorts of things in Star Wars Unlimited, whenever you have a 3-2 and your opponent has played a 1-3, almost always,
almost always just eat it.
Just take it, right? Because it's like the one thing your guy can kill and survive. That comes up with Black Sun Starfighter and A-Wings a lot.
Because A-Wings, sure.
It's a dominant play, less against like a Quinlan that pings, but I mean, against a Sabine, if you can eat their A-Wing and then have a Space Sentinel, that feels real bad for them.
My mistake probably was, I know this deck's going to be fast. What's the other fast deck I know? Sabine ECL, right? Forgetting that Cunning adds this entire bounce capture suite to fast decks. So, a clear the fields also blows out my retainer there. There's just so many tools that yellow has to mess with Huyang that I, in hindsight, cannot recommend the play that I attempted to do in this match.
But, I mean, I think that this is an important match, and we selected it to kind of start our series here because you commented how you actually learned about the deck and what to do as you were playing.
Yep, you'll see me. We'll go on. Obviously, thankfully, games here are best of 3 and not best of 1. But game 1 now becomes, I feel like I'm on the back foot. Let me just gather as much information as I can about what cards are in this deck, first of all, and then also how my opponent responds to certain board states. Is he likely to trade or go face? When is he going to feel threatened by units? And try and take all of that information and make, hopefully, games 2 and then games 3, if we get there, into a more evenly paced match.
Because I think the Sanctioner Shuttle is actually a 2-2, right?
It's a 2-3.
2-3. So you do have to run the Falcon into it, not play another 3.
Yeah.
All right, and then you guys found the dials, which I understand that they're kind of hard to use. They stick a little bit, but they really, really help people watching.
Yeah. And here you can see, we're on the 4 resource turn already. I've not used ECL. In my head, I'm probably thinking ECL Ayla is a perfect smash into a deployed Ahsoka because she has 6 health. And one thing that I appreciate probably in this moment is how fast this Ahsoka deck is. And ECLing early will help stall the bleeding to then be able to control the Ahsoka flip in other ways. So I could have imagined ECLing that Falcon into the Sanctioner Shuttle to both prevent that damage and get a Sentinel on the ground. But this is me learning in real time.
Yep, and there's rules interaction there too. I mean, when something comes back from capture, I mean, despite it being the Gamma Guard, it doesn't have wings buff because it's a new copy of the
No, but it would at least have a Sentinel.
It did have Sentinel, but it was no longer 5/4 because it's technically a new copy.
It is a new retainer.
Right. All right, so you're behind on damage and board somewhat.
I'm behind in every way.
Right.
I'm behind on units on the board. I'm behind on damage.
Now, going back to the list, I mean, had you had a quarry to throw on that R2 as you had actions to, I mean, that'd be a lot closer too, because you'd have the ability to kill it and it's unique.
And one thing I'll do between games 1 and 2, and pretty much any matchup, especially new matchups, is readjust the relative value of cards in my head. Right. So after this experience, BHQ is going to become a priority for me because I know my opponent's going to play a bunch of small units. It's easy to kill them. I'll be able to trigger it fairly straightforwardly.
Yeah, and one thing that you'll see really good players do, and I mean, our last live stream with Mickey, who's actually joining us for commentary, Mickey D, on some of these matches as well, is actually talking through immediately what I could have done differently or what I should have done differently, kind of recapping, during it. And I've heard you do that a few times too, just watching your replays. And this is actually the first time you've seen these replays, right?
Yeah, I have left these games behind, but it's nice to come back to them.
Yeah. And it's they were stashed away in my laptop, and then it got stranded in Minnesota, which delayed things even a little farther, but we're back. Yeah.
Your laptop has been on a journey. It sounds like it broke.
The laptop has been all
behind.
Well, I mean, I think I've been involved now in 9 PQ broadcasts. So, I mean, it does get busy.
Yeah. So you can see me. I'm at 17 life. I have 8 remaining. There's an uncontested Falcon in space. My opponent has not deployed Ahsoka. I am scrambling for ways to stabilize here, and it is not looking good.
And now you got a problem because you've run out of actions.
Yep. I likely was trying to catch Ahsoka off guard with an ECL Ayla, but he's forced me to either pass, in which case he likely just claims and continues pressuring, or play something else.
Falcon's not bad. Yeah. And potentially can turn off coordinate if there's not another unit.
Yep.
So Ahsoka is way strong with coordinate. This is only going
pretty underwhelming without. Yep.
Yeah, this is going to be a 3.
This is a 3 hit.
Right. And with yellow, red, I mean, you're really only worried about Ahsoka sabers potentially. Potentially Mace saber, I guess. But I don't think that's in this deck. There's not.
I don't think that card was that set 3. That was set 3. You're right. That was set 3.
So I think this Ahsoka does have Jedi trait, to where if it was a green Ahsoka, you potentially would have General's Blade, or a blue Ahsoka for sure is going to be running Jedi lightsabers. Mm-hmm. I know that the Gandark is a big Ahsoka blue.
Yeah.
Daring Raid is very good for Ahsoka there. Saves the day because that Falcon was probably going to heal by coming back to hand.
Was going to be able to at least even out the space. Yeah.
Right. So you have no margin for error whatsoever with 5 damage. You immediately Ayla into Ahsoka. So the plan eventually did work.
It gets there, perhaps a little late. My respite is, right, my opponent is down, it looks like, to 2 cards in hand. So I'm stemming the bleeding, but red 3 does not look good.
Mm-hmm. And now
he's going to force me to claim.
You have to claim.
Yeah. And he's presenting 3 lethal threats. I don't think there's a card in my deck, let alone in the Star Wars Unlimited card catalog.
Now,
that could...
One thing
that's
that was lethal there, but you played it out to the very end. I mean, you probably there, but
absolutely.
Uh, my point on that is you need information when you're going against a deck you haven't played. Just play it out. You're not going to be running out of time in Ahsoka versus Quinlan.
Exactly. I am trying to get every last piece of knowledge about cards. Now I have a sense of, one, this deck is incredibly fast, and two, importantly, this deck is running capture effects with really easy ways to get coordinate online. I don't think I saw any bounce game one, but I'm now thinking in the yellow suite of what can yellow do. So I'm going to be very cautious about Hu Yangs and General's Blades on anything that's not a Quinlan leader.
And you run a lot of bounce too. I mean, so capture is
I sure do.
A tricky mechanic to use. It really helped Ahsoka there, but I mean, generally, capture is not good against decks with all kinds of waylays and spare the target stuff.
Although bouncing a sanctioner shuttle,
if you can get the capture effect on a leader, it's different, right? Because then that's generally pretty stable. But capturing onto a non-leader unit is very susceptible to bounce.
And that hurts more if the unit you're using to capture is something like a Cad Bane, right? And you've spent 7 resources and it gets bounced for 2 or 3. But playing 3 for a Sanctioner Shuttle, getting bounced, is oftentimes an even trade. And there he would end up, ahead additionally because he's able to remove the Hu Yang buff.
And Sanctioner Shuttle is seeing play and jump to light speed going forward. I've seen it, and it's a counter there because that Luke riding a red 3 hits for 7, but can be captured.
It's one of the few answers to Chewie Pilot also, because Chewie Pilot doesn't prevent capture.
Yeah, I've seen it in Han Yellow. All right, so before we get to game 2, what would you think you have sideboarded here for this match, having seen it, and you've answered a little bit before?
Yeah. Well, so I know my opponent is going to be blitz fast. So immediately I'm taking out Tex. I'm looking at my sideboard. I do not want Hans. I do not want the U-Wing. I might want to just swap in the Sanctioner Shuttle 2 of for the Tech 2 of.
Get a little revenge
call it there
from that game 1.
Yeah. Yeah. You capture my units, I'll capture yours. But coming into this tournament, right, I was expecting a fast field. And so I wanted my main board to reflect that with just enough, right, in the form of the 2 Techs and the Falcon to survive longer matchups. So there's not a lot of sideboarding that I need to do. It's more about adjusting my game plan.
And you were correct. I mean, so the number 1 represented deck was Sabine. CAD, and that's due to Carlos in Chicago, why there's so much CAD here. But that was actually the only mid-range deck, or pure mid-range deck there. Quinlan, Voss, I mean, depending on what the list is, I mean, the Quinlan Tarkentown can be almost pure aggro. I mean, bordering into mid-range. And Django is the same kind of spot as Quinlan, as extremely aggressive mid-range deck. So you're not wrong about a fast field. That's exactly what it was. All right, so this is that... hold on. Lost our spot when we went to the sideboard. All right, so this is the beginning of game 2.
Trying to claw my way back into this matchup.
And Ahsoka is up.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody feels good having lost the first game.
No. Very much sort of pit of dread in the stomach. I'm 3-0 going into this round. Everyone has their eyes on, 6-1. And so picking up a loss early is not how you imagine the tournament going. Interestingly, I choose to start with a Battlefield Marine, and I think that's because I saw him play 2 1-drops in game 1. I expect him to do the same thing. In hindsight, possibly I should have passed, because in this exact scenario, I would have been able to taken off his shield with my Quinlan ping, but I don't, and now have to adapt to a shielded unit on the ground.
Right, but you're clearly planning to play under curve here, I would hope, with playing the Bounty Hunter Quarry off the beginning with the 2-drop second, and it's a Sentinel 2-drop. And James is kicking.
So now he has to trade.
And he's kicking himself for not attacking with the crafty before.
Yeah, I think it's better for him probably, even when he doesn't attack, it's probably better for him to trade into the Gamorrean Retainer than let me eat his crafty smuggler with my Battlefield Marine.
Yeah, and I think that actually compounded it too, right? By playing the units out there into the space arena. I I mean, he lost any benefit from the crafty, and now you have 9 damage of attack represented in
We're
the
both
Ground
still
Arena.
at 0 on base, but I have 3 units to his 2. I have 7 resources to his 3 on the board.
Yeah, he could have taken out the Gamma essentially at no cost.
Yep.
Because it would have ended up with the same board state minus a Gamorrean Retainer on your side just from the sequence.
With just a healed Battlefield Marine then.
Right. And then instead he ends up capturing. And actually, I'm not sure that that's the right capture either. I mean, I potentially capture Cobb. Because that thinking, does it have to be 2 or less, or is it 3 or less?
It's I believe it's 3 or less, so he could have captured Cobb. I think what he's thinking is probably, we're approaching 5 resources, let me clear the Sentinel so that my Ahsoka can attack base.
Right.
But so much is going to change in the board state between now and then.
Right.
Probably going for the biggest target. I think you're right.
Well, and also the most valuable, right? Because Cobb's thing happens when he dies. Yep. And
not when he's captured.
And I definitely question playing a 501st right there with 2 3/2s, or at least 1 3/2 left on the board.
And right, it's now right for my Sundari Peacekeeper to just eat it, restore 2.
Right. Oh yeah, you have Sundari too. So I mean, there's literally any of those units kills it. He's not going to use the Marine because it would die. But and the Sundari does it. So choosing between Cobb and Sundari, what are you doing here?
I want my restore. Right, I've seen him capture. Sanctioner Shuttle is not unique. He could throw another one and prevent the restore this turn, so I want my heal too.
Yep. And that Sanctioner Shuttle, I think, is going to have increased play in this set with all of the ships with big upgrades.
As a counter to pilots, and when the unit is recovered from capture, the pilot is gone because it was an upgrade.
Yep, that's right. Unless it's Luke, then it might be in your ground arena punching.
Well, unless it's Luke. Now I deploy Quinlan and put a general's plate on it. I haven't seen his list. This is a dangerous thing to do in game 2 against a deck that has the potential to run both Bamboozle and Mandalorian Fangfighter with 4 open resources.
Right.
So I was very much taking a gamble. I don't know if that was the gamble that I fully thought through or one that just felt good in the moment.
Well, it worked.
It worked. Never punished, as we say.
And then Cobb now has the buff from Wing, I imagine.
Yeah. You can see me start to attack with Cobb, and I pull back, likely because I'm trying to bait his Ahsoka flip. He flips probably feeling safe, and this is really where Shoot First can shine. That 1 extra attack power lets me take Ahsoka out with my buffed Cobb.
And, I think Shoot First, its place is in decks that absolutely need to win an arena.
Yeah.
And that's what your deck is, right?
I just need ground control.
Right. Do you think you can get away with this little space and jump to light speed?
Oh, very, very much no. Very much no. I tried in some early games on Karabast, and just the new pilot heavy, like the Poe aggro decks, the wedge decks that put 2 pilots on a big Millennium Falcon. If I don't get my bounce, I'm basically screwed. So I'm playing around with more space. The question will be, how much do I need?
Right. I mean, at least Bright Hope, I would think.
Yeah, Bright Hope has gone up in value for me significantly.
Yeah. And did you just ECL a Falcon there?
Yeah, that's so an interesting play I did. He has so many space units that he's threatening to attack. I'm realizing we're in a race, and a lot of this game is going to come down to action economy. Looks like I might not have any cards left in my hand, so it was sort of a now or never ECL. And if I don't have an immediate target in my mind, I've already cleared Ahsoka. I don't need to ECL and Ayla. Getting to clear 2 units with the Falcon attack and the Quinlan ping in 1 action felt like a good move.
It appears to have swung the game, and it's not like
yes,
you had a
and so that puts me now
ECL.
ahead on damage. I've got, looks like, 2 lethal attackers in the Quinlan and the Cobb Vanth, threatening restore still with Sundari.
Running out
But
of
it's a
space
tight race, right?
in the ground arena.
Yes. The swarm is swarming.
This is the swarm. And the other thing to note there is, and I think it's an important point, I mean, the Quinlan being out solves the one drop problem in large, like, right? Once you have Quinlan and protected, which you certainly have at this point, I mean, you're able to ping that cartel turncoat and, you know, hit the things because it's lower than, and it's unlimited. Quinlan, if you,
With,
you know,
with Quinlan out long enough, it can feel like a little overwhelming barrage once
Right.
you get sort of the swarm chain going.
right. And oftentimes, I mean, and that's one reason why a lot of times you go like 2-2-1 if Quinlan Tarkentown with 2-2 drops and a force throw. I mean, if they're running a deck that's just lots of little stuff, I mean, you can kill something with 2 health by just playing 2 guys and then, you know, force throw away.
So I pulled out game 2 there. I pulled out the win. And the 2 cards that we saw me play that I think made the most difference between games 1 and game 2 was I got a Bounty Hunter's Quarry, which let me get sort of an immediate board advantage. And I had a Sundari Peacekeeper, which let me get Restore. And it's those 2 things that really, in my mind, are what I need to stem the flood that Ahsoka is trying to do and let me stabilize.
And it's got to be a little consoling winning that second game in kind of convincing fashion, too. You know, after getting frankly smoked in the first game.
Yep. The surprise factor that he, I think, sat down with is starting to fade a little bit. I'm falling into comfortable rhythms, right? I've never played this deck, but I've played Sabine Yellow before. So I'm starting to understand the matchup that we're in. And my heart rate has probably calmed down a little bit. I've evened the score. And now it's, can I play a third game of Star Wars Unlimited?
Yeah, there you go. All right, we'll just pump up a little fast there. Did he give you initiative? I don't think so. There's the cuts. Let's see.
A lot of times, I was on stream a few times that day, and we often forgot to move the little coin around.
Yeah, and I get it. The looks like it's getting moved here.
I think now we're talking about it, yeah.
But I do, and I tell my son this too. I do recommend always using a physical initiative token and always moving it too, because that's actually what one, the rules say. The rules mention an initiative token, and 2, it lets you know who has initiative at that point, and that sounds to be obvious, but I've seen it messed up in coverage where one player should have.
I had my quarterfinal match at Chicago. We actually, game 3, we had to do a judge call because we both drew our hands and resourced, and then realized that my opponent, who had lost game 2, had forgotten to say who he wanted to start with initiative. And nowhere in the rules did it say what to do in that situation. So the judges had to just come up with the most reasonable solution that they could think of.
What did they do?
They said, we're going to put you in what's deemed the disadvantageous position. So we are going to say that you have given up initiative. And I started. It ultimately didn't matter because it was Quinlan ECL versus Cad Tarkentown. So there was just a lot of passing. But in another matchup, it could have made a big difference.
Yeah.
So starting with a single 2-drop, probably already better for me than double 1-drop in this game. And I don't know if that's because he didn't have it or he wanted to go space.
Best thing is him now. I think he just resourced to red 3.
Okay.
Well,
the only space that I have is the Falcon.
Right.
Which is a nice answer to red 3.
He doesn't know that, right? I mean, not at this point. I mean, you have a relatively unknown deck too. He definitely sees an R3 and R2. I saw that one clearly, and he puts it on the bottom.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Red 3 is bad into Falcon. Okay, so the Sundari comes down, and there's a Gamma, and he He's a soldier of the 501st, and we'll regret that immediately.
And here I say, never again will a 1-3 be safe from my Gamorrean retainer.
And it's in Star Wars Unlimited. That's an important thing. I mean, as Vader, right? One of the ways you beat aggressive hero decks is the claim off initiative and then ambush a Black Sun into their A-wing. You know, now that you have a Space Sentinel, you know, Sabine doesn't do 1 damage easily, right? She has lots of things that attack more, but I mean, that's oftentimes the right thing. And then you're playing with initiative the rest of the game.
So I'm very much here still in the mentality of slowing down damage, trying to get board control. I'm not thinking about his base at all. I know that he's still got cards in his hand. He's going to be spitting out units, and I just need to slow the game down as much as I can.
No, I think you did a very good play there capturing the Sundari, recognizing that the Restorer is devastating, and you are bounty hunter scoring the Sanctuary Shuttle, so you must have an answer. R2 kills
well, I know that
Camo.
It's a must-kill unit because I need my Peacekeeper back, so probably even if I don't have an answer in my hand then, it's my number 1 kill, but it turns out I'll ambush my own shuttle into it.
Now, so you get your Sundari back and Bounties Hunter's Quarry.
Yep. But what I don't do immediately following is take advantage of the coordinate that I have now enabled to capture his Anakin's Interceptor. And that was just, you know, it's a high pressure tournament. It's a long day. I started the turn with 0 units on the board, or I started that action, so I wasn't even thinking of getting coordinate online.
Yep.
But that is a missed opportunity that I have there.
And if you want to do that for sure, before ambushing, announce the ambush is before the when played, and then do exactly what
As
you
the
did.
active player, you get to order the triggers, and they're the Bounty Hunter's Quarry from the when defeated. Well, the ambush then lets the Bounty Hunter's Quarry trigger.
Right. I think it's nested. I think you're
right. That's the term.
Right. So, yeah, no, and it's a good point. Now, that's very advanced things. I mean, I think that that's not obvious at all, that's how that works. But I do think that you're correct that you could have done that. Absolutely.
It does. Even missing that, I end up with 2 full health Sundari Peacekeepers on the board, which is where I want to be in this matchup.
That's a true statement. That's where Sabine would want to be. I mean, if I was on Sabine ECL, I'd be prioritizing Sundari into this matchup too, same as I do into Sabine Yellow.
Yep.
It's also crucial to Django because, I mean, you just got to survive Django doing Django things. No, they get tapped down a lot in that matchup. Oh.
But the 5 health lets them survive a ping on a Tarkin town, which can be really crucial.
Right. And their weakness is that they're weak to being attacked in the ground arena.
Yep. A lot of decks are just going only space.
Yeah, and we can see the only card in James's hand is an A-Wing, which does not feel good. Where's Cassian going?
Yeah.
You're not dead, Cassian. You're okay.
He's giving up. He says there's too much restored. I'm out of here.
I'm done with this rebellion.
Yeah.
I actually,
he said Ahsoka was going to do well for me.
Yeah. Well, you know, she's a rebel too.
So together they do clear one of the Peacekeepers.
Now, if they would have made me, I don't know why Mama Ahsoka doesn't have Rebel Tag. I mean, if I recall my Rebels correctly, she was Fulcrum.
Yep. I'm watching through Rebels right now. Actually, I just have a few episodes left.
Oh, that's excellent. Excellent show. Clone Wars is excellent too.
So this is one of my favorite positions to be in. I have a readied 6 power unit, essentially keeping an enemy leader hostage, right? If they choose not to deploy, that's great for me. If they choose to deploy, that's also great for me.
Right.
He makes the choice to deploy. I say, that's fine. I'll eat your leader.
Yeah, and you just take the Ahsoka to the body, you know, the 5 damage back because of the coordinate. It's a static effect.
Yeah. And I choose to bounce the Cassian after. I could have ordered that either way. If I bounce Cassian first, I take 3 damage, either to my base or my Sundari. and then only 3 back on Quinlan, or I get rid of the Ahsoka first. I think watching it back, I was probably prioritizing minimizing base damage, so I didn't want Ahsoka to get any attack off at all.
Though, well, I mean, I suppose it could be playing around Bamboozle because he had 2 cards in hand. You wouldn't have known what they are, but
Oh, sure.
it also doesn't
don't
make
wanna give
sense
my-
to me that he would have deployed the Ahsoka at all, though, if he had a
Yeah.
Bamboozle available. He should have just hit the Quinlan with it right away. So I think that you're right. You
I
can
also
save
don't
the
wanna
combo
give-
damage.
Yeah. Don't want to give myself too much credit for thinking through every possible line that my opponents could do. Sometimes you just got to play by instinct.
And the reason we're doing this is to analyze after the fact. I mean, and
Yeah.
I say this on the late night streams with some frequency, but it's real easy watching here from comfortable chairs, seeing anything.
Oh, sure.
It is not easy being on the feature table and doing it then. And I think most people who play this game regularly will do that. Let's see, what are you pinging with that?
Looks like I probably just forgot. Probably won't matter in the long run because all of his units have 3 health, and it looks like the game's going to last 1 more turn. But right, good to note watching games back. Where did I miss triggers? Make a mental note to, if Quinlan's deployed, I can ping every time.
And you called Surprise Strike with Kira, and he just paid the
Yeah,
fine.
which was the only card in his hand, and now him spending 5 resources on that is, I'm sure, doesn't feel good.
It does 7, He's not feeling
Bringing
good,
me
but-
from 4 to 11. No. I think at this point it's pretty clear to both of us how the rest of the game's going to go.
But play him out. There is the concede. So you're on then to being 4-0 with your novel.
4-0, keeping the streak alive. Yep.
All right. So we're going to be doing a lot of these. We're going to do the remainder of the rounds of the Chicago PQ. And you'll be back for some of the future matches, Grumpy?
Yeah, you'll see me in a few rounds, and then you'll see me in the top cut.
All right. So check it out, and we'll have another round tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks, Loopee.
Thank you.